Hi, I'm Rick Phillips, and joining me today are two very special guests, Dr. Kushner and Dr. Phil McGraw. Welcome to Two Diabetes. We are ecstatic to have you in our community today, and I hope someday you'll come back and join us again. Dr. Phil, let me start off by explaining a little bit about Two Diabetes to you. We are a community of people who support each other on our journey. It's very much like the one of the steps in the program that you described. We are a greater team for people who have diabetes, and in that regard, we really welcome you. Can you tell us a little bit about your story and how you joined the club none of us want to be in?
Well, I can. Rick, thanks for giving me the opportunity to do it. And I love this whole concept of what has been created here. And I really want to thank everybody for letting me join and be part of this today. I really appreciate it. You're right. It's a club none of us want to be in. I've been in it for over 25 years now. And I'll just give you a little of my personal story, and you interrupt me at any time if I'm boring you with too much information. But I was in private practice back in Dallas over 25 years ago, and I was really having a lot of trouble with energy swings, just really what I call bonking. In At different times, it seemed like they were kind of random. If anything, it was happening in the afternoons. And I've always been an athlete, and so I was in really good shape. I exercised regularly, and I couldn't figure it out. I went to the doctor. He was a good friend of mine. Really took some time, did a workup on me, and he came and said, "Listen, I got good news and bad news." And he said, the bad news is you do have a disease. It's type 2 diabetes. The good news is it's manageable. This is something you can manage. Can't cure it, but you can manage it. And, my reaction at the time, I know a lot of people never want to get a diagnosis, but my reaction at the time was really one of relief. I guess I've got the attitude that 50% of the solution to any problem lies in defining it. And, I was glad to know what it was, know that it was manageable, and I'm one that kind of takes cerebral approach to things, and I just immersed myself in the literature. He gave me a lot of it. I went to the library at the medical school for a lot of it. And I just immersed myself in it because I figured knowledge was power. And so I learned everything I could about it and figured out right away I was going to have to start doing some things very differently than what I had done before. And over the last 25 years, I have really figured out some things that I think have become essential in changing my lifestyle and managing this disease down to being as minimal an impact on my life as possible. And that's really what I've done with AstraZeneca, is taken what I've learned over that 25 years as a patient and saying, here's what has really worked for me, and translated that into the On It Movement program that I've set forth on the website, onitmovement.com. So that's kind of how it started, and kind of how I translated it all. And it really required me to make some major changes in the way I was living.
Dr. Phil, we know in our community that stigma is a serious issue for people with diabetes, really all types of diabetes. And I don't know, can you give us your opinion about stigma and how people can help to overcome that, both as a community but also in our own personal lives?
I think I do think it's a big deal because I've talked to so many people that um, when they hear that, particularly type 2 diabetes, I think it's true with all diabetes, as you say, but certainly type 2, um, particularly the uninformed, which isn't that always the case with stereotyping and stigmas, but particularly the uninformed tend to be judgmental and think, oh, that means you've been lazy, you've been overeating, you haven't been taking care of yourself, and I just really hope that people do some myth busting about this because, and I have to tell you, when I was diagnosed, I was exercising 6, 7 times a week, sometimes twice a day. Um, I was in great. I could run 5 miles a day. I sometimes did 2 a days, as I said. So I certainly uh, defied that stereotype. And I think people, if they do their research, they understand. Wow, there's a lot of factors that contribute to this, other than what I have done or haven't done historically. And even if you haven't done everything you could or couldn't have done. That was then, this is now. You have to do what you can do in the moment. And Maya Angelou said it very well. She said, you did what you knew how to do, and when you knew better, you did better. So even if you look back and you think, you know what, I didn't do everything I could have done, that was then, this is now. You knew better, you did better. And but I think people are very wrong to jump to conclusions about that. There are so many other factors. I had diabetes on both sides of my family tree for many generations, and I think I was predisposed to it, and I think that it just bit me. So I really hope people don't judge themselves because, look, that's a demotivator. You can't let your internal dialogue drag you down. I don't care if you have been slovenly in your life. That was then, this is now. You can't let that drag you down. And if your internal dialogue is self-defeating, you need to get rid of that. You need to move forward from that. That's step one in the On It campaign. Move forward. Put that stuff behind you.
When you talk about building your team, what are some of the factors that went into building your team? And I noticed that you speak a little bit about not being successful by yourself and having to involve others. What were kind of the steps that led to that path?
Well, I've always prided myself on two things that are relevant here. One is knowing what I don't know, and two is surrounding myself with really good people. I think that's been a real key to my success. And look, I'm not a physician, and there are such fine physicians out there that know so much about the hydraulics of our chemistries. And that was so helpful for me to put an endocrinologist, in my case, right at the center of my treatment team. Someone that knew so much about this that I did not know that could help me with all of that. That was the center of my team. And next was my spouse, because my wife is very active in working with me on my health, her health. She lost her mother at a very young age, and so she became very active in trying to reverse some of the things that took her mother so she didn't go down the same path. And so I got her on my team right away. And look, I'm from the South, and in the South, I don't know about other parts of the country, but in the South, Mama loves you with food. And I'd go visit my mother, and man, she'd bake huge meals. And I mean, fry up 10 pounds of potatoes, make a couple of banana cream pies, a chocolate cake, and be wounded if you didn't eat, And so I'd say, Mother, wait a minute here. And once she understood that for me, these things were toxic and didn't pressure me or take it personal, so I got her on my team. Then, um, exercise, getting someone, if you're not an athlete, getting that kind of person there, getting a nutritionist there. It's not just enough to get rid of the bad foods. You've got to replace those with healthy alternatives, because if you don't, you're going to gravitate right back to those toxic foods. You can't just clean out your environment. You have to populate it with the good, healthy alternatives. Hungry people are going to eat, so you got to have healthy alternatives there. So it was all about getting people that could help me with the right alternatives. And so my team included exercise physiologist, nutritionist, family members, friends, physician at the center of it. All of those things became parts of my team that is still very active to this day, to this very day.
Dr. Kushner, as a endocrinologist, what do you advise people who come to you with type 2? What are some of the early things that you advise them to do?
Well, first of all, Rick, I'm a board-certified family physician, and we are the ones that take care of the majority of patients with diabetes in this country. I have a lot of diabetic patients, and what I advise them when they have new onset diabetes is one of the things that's part of the On It movement, which I really like that Dr. Phil highlighted, is that you take one step at a time when you move forward. And what's very unique about this condition is that it is an individual condition. Every person knows what their unique relationship is with food and with exercise and what that meant for their culture and what that means for them in their day-to-day life and for their anxiety and for their stress. And so you really have to spend time getting to know each individual have their lifestyle changes that are right for them. And one of the most important things is really planning ahead. If you're a diabetic and you walk in and you're hungry and your sugar is starting to head down and there's a plate full of donuts, I don't care how much willpower you have, you are not going to say no to those donuts, because this is a Pavlovian response. So you have to be able to have an idea of what those different alternatives, as Dr. Phil said, what are those different choices, so that you can plan ahead and you're not looking those donuts, you and that donut, in the face by yourself. Same thing goes with exercise. Some people have arthritis. Some people have limitations as to what they're willing to do in their day-to-day. And fortunately, with the internet, many of us have other options. Some people exercise better in a group setting. Some people have the option of having an individual trainer. And that's why it's very important for people to feel empowered to be the captain of their own team. They know themselves better than any clinician will ever know them. So if you can be the captain of your own team and choose the right people and the right parts of your team, your likelihood of success will be much better.
Dr. Kushner, I'm sorry that I mislabeled your practice. As you say, most people who have type 2 diabetes either start with a family physician or have the family physician as the primary caregiver. And we are so very appreciative of family physicians in our community. One thing that I do know is that when folks see their family physician and they have that blood sugar, that very first blood sugar done, and it's elevated, they are immediately overtaken by all kinds of feelings. But what they really are overtaken with is information. So do you help direct them to specific information? Do you suggest like the ADA, or is there, do you hand folks a booklet in your practice?
You know, I have not found booklets to be particularly helpful, but you really recommend.
Neither have we.
You have a good idea of what you're talking about based on the fact that you recognize that when people first hear that sugar is elevated, that it's an overwhelming feeling, and the only thing they hear is diabetes and am I going to be on insulin? Those are the only two questions that are immediately directed. The ADA has a fabulous website. A good place to feel empowered is going to this onitmovement.com website as a starting point, because it has some good hints to take a breath and recognize where you go from there. And fortunately, the ADA has good direction to answer questions, and also nationally we have good support from the National Council of Diabetes Education and Information. Those are where I primarily direct people. And then I don't try to give people more than that information in that first visit, because, as you said, it's an overwhelming moment. And it's actually more overwhelming than the average person recognizes, because it's not just about sugar or A1C, it's also about what is your normal range. Are you getting low sugar during the day? Is your sugar getting too high in the day, but yet your A1C is in the normal range? So it's an interesting, it's a really interesting condition to take care of. And the good news is that research is moving in the direction of being able to prevent the long-term complications better and better each day.
Dr. Phil, we in our community so value our type 3s. We call people who we live with are type 3s. For instance, my wife is a type 3. She has all the burden of diabetes, living with all the burden, and yet she does not have the condition. When people come for mental health services and they may be having difficulty with diabetes, how do you counsel them to involve their type 3s, or how do you help them trust type 3s to still accept them? And one big issue that we have are people who are dating. It's a tremendous issue for people who start dating, and when do I tell a person I'm on a date with, that sort of thing. Do you have advice about that in general?
You know, I think once you get past that feeling of judgment, and I think it starts with yourself. I think once you get past judging yourself and you don't have those feelings of self-recrimination, you don't have that internal dialogue where you're really putting yourself down, you're really being blaming of yourself, then I think you give yourself permission to be very forthcoming about where you are in terms of your reality, your needs. And I think anytime you're going to have an authentic relationship with somebody, the reality is that you come with some issues, and you know, I think it's, to me, I think you just have to be forthcoming about those things and recognize that you're going to self-manage. Nobody can do it for you. People can help you, and I always think that if you're in a relationship with somebody, they're either going to be supportive or they're going to be sabotaging. It's very hard to be completely neutral when you're dealing with somebody that has, you're going to be helping or you're going to be hurting. And I think you just need to let people know straight up, but give them the information. They cannot guess at what you need. They cannot guess at what your problems are. You have to be willing to straight up let them know what you can and can't do. And look, this isn't something that you have to wear on your sleeve. And I'll give you a perfect analogy, at least what I think. My dad was a really bad alcoholic. I have chosen not to drink. So for the last 50 years, I haven't had a drink. And as a result, when I go out with people that do drink, I don't have to make a big deal out of it. I think most of the people I go out with don't even know that I don't drink. It's not a burden to them. I self-manage. I order a beverage. I don't need to make a big deal out of the fact that it's non-alcoholic. They don't have to change what they do. And it's the same way in this, because I'm a type 2 and I have to eat every 3 hours, and because there are certain things that I simply don't consume, that's my self-manage it. That's my issue, and I'll manage it. If you want to help me and make that easier, that's great. If you don't, I'm still going to manage it. So, I don't really rely on anyone else to do that. I accept the help if it's offered. I welcome the support if it's given, but I recognize that this is my disease and it's my disease to manage. I have a team that has dedicated themselves to it, but if it's somebody that hasn't voluntarily done that, then that's the reality. Either way, I have to manage my disease, and I'm going to do that.
If you think back 20 or 25 years ago when you were first diagnosed, what would you say to the younger Dr. Phil that you now know that you did not know then?
I think the most important thing was to realize that this is not something that, it's kind of like playing golf. Golf's the only game I've ever played that I can't do better by hustling. When I was 25 years ago, my idea of finesse was get a bigger hammer, and you just can't do that with type 2 diabetes. This is going to be here until, maybe there'll be some cure someday, but there certainly hasn't been in the last 25 years. It's going to be there a long time. Small changes add up across time, and you just need to recognize that if I can make a small change this week, that's good. I can add a small change next week, that's better. Another change the next week, that's better. And I kind of would have told myself 25 years ago, be a little more patient with yourself, give yourself more credit, let your lifestyle kick in and get into a rhythm, and you'll be just fine. You can't do all of this overnight. Your body has to have time to adjust. Just because you've changed your lifestyle up overnight doesn't mean that your body's going to catch up overnight. And I had to be patient with myself. And even though I made changes overnight, my body was still a little chaotic. It took a while to get my body into the rhythm of my behavior, but it caught up. I would have told myself be more patient with myself than I was.
Most of us who have had diabetes for a long period of time know that we have periods where we, for lack of a better term, we fall off the diabetes wagon. We fail. And sometimes we get stuck in that failure. Do you have advice to help people move beyond the failure? Because at various times, I imagine you have failed just as I know I failed in making lifestyle changes.
Well, Rick, personally, I've never failed, so I'm just...
Well, I can tell you.
If I did...
I can tell you I started failing when I woke up this morning.
Yeah, I haven't failed since last night when I got to the hotel. Now, think about it this way, and look, we all do the best we can, and particularly when somebody is new at this, think about it this way. When you're new and you're getting new habits and new behaviors, you need to recognize that you're shaping this behavior. Think about it when you had a baby and you were teaching your baby to walk. Your baby took a few steps and fell down. What did you do? Did you go over there and yank the baby up and say, "Get up, you dumb baby, what's wrong with you"? No, of course you didn't. You went over there and you picked the baby up and you said, "That's okay, you're doing great. Let's go 4 steps this time." You cheered the baby on and you clapped when the baby walked. You said, "Great, you're doing good," because it was a baby learning new things. And our body learns new things. We're learning new behaviors. Our body's learning new balances within itself. So you've got to encourage yourself. If you fall down, you dust yourself off and you say, "You know what? It's a new day." And the good thing about behaviors is they have a beginning and an end. Behaviors are discrete units. A behavior is an observable event. It has a beginning, it has an end. And if you fall off the wagon, that means you're either sitting on the couch, or you're eating something you shouldn't eat, or you're not doing the things you need to do. But that behavior has a beginning and an end. When it's over, it's over. And the minute you take the first step back on the right path, you know what? You're back on the right path. Reward yourself for doing well and move on. Not even God can change what has happened. What we need to do is reinforce what is happening. The past is over. The future hasn't happened yet. The only time is right now. Reward yourself for what you're doing right now when you're making the right choices, and move on. I mean, that's all we can do.
Dr. Phil, that's our last question. Our time is up. We just want to thank you so much for joining us. 2 Diabetes is a multinational group. We have people who connect with us from Australia and Europe, all over North and South America. We have a separate Spanish language channel. And we are thrilled that you joined us today. Dr. Kushner, we're also very thrilled that you joined us today. Thank you so much. I hope at some time in the future you'll be back in on us. We would welcome either of you at any time. And as I said, this is a club nobody wanted to join, but we all know we can't do it by ourselves. Thank you.
Well, hope you have us again sometime. So long.
Bye.